today I'm joined by David MacArthur, who's director at Accessibility Now. David's going to be speaking at Tech Show London, but today we're going to be talking through some points on accessibility. So thank you so much, David, for joining me. So the first question I have today for you is accessibility work often begins long before a product is released. From your experience, what changes when teams think about inclusion from day one rather than treating it as a late stage check?
Yeah, well, when teams think about inclusion from the beginning of a project, the main thing that changes, other than being cheaper overall, which is always nice, I would say is the people. When everyone involved is learning as they go, they start to question things that they would otherwise just not even consider. Once you're looking consciously for accessibility issues, you see them everywhere. It is something of a curse for me. And Accessibility Now often put out a bit of a challenge, sort of. If I can't find an issue on your company's homepage within about 10 minutes, then 50% off, because it's so common. They're right there staring you in the face in the same way that I think most people in any profession, they'll see, if they work in marketing, they'll see a piece of marketing material, they'll look at it and go, oh, nope, you've messed that one up. And the people change and they start to spot those things. It's a learning process.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you must have done a lot of work when it comes to this and maybe seen some common misconceptions regarding accessibility and what organizations think is good accessibility when it's actually not the case. I'm wondering if you have any examples of that.
Yeah, I think a big one in the accessibility field is overlays. So those are just a sort of little add-on piece of script that you can put onto a website that a lot of them say they do everything and they fix everything. But I think most people know that when someone's trying to sell you something that says it will fix all of your problems magically in no time at all, there are always little asterisks and little bits of fine print at the end. And I think that companies go wrong with that a lot of the time, thinking that this is very, very complicated. And I'm not selling myself short too much, but it's not as complicated as it looks. A lot of it is just knowing that expertise, knowing where to look, and doing some very small changes. Some are bigger, but for the most part, they're very small changes that companies can make.
That's so true. And so can you give us some examples of maybe some things that teams or organizations can implement right off the bat? Maybe from a day one perspective, that would actually go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just shift your perspective and think about your end users. Rather than the person looking in the mirror at you, think about a disabled person. So in practical terms, you want to think about adding alt text to your images. That can work for websites, that can work for apps that you're creating, that can work for any sort of digital marketing material. If you work in social media, it's one of those things that's very broad. I'd say the other big thing is color contrast. If you look at something and you can see, black text on a yellow background, that works pretty well. It's nice and poppy. There's good contrast there. If it's a light yellow on a yellow background, right away, your eyes, even with perfect vision, you can see there's something not quite right there. And then if you lower that vision drastically, even just a little, just give it that consideration. If you just sort of let your eyes unfocus, let them blur a little bit when you're looking at something, you can see it. Most people can see it pretty quickly.
And we do have a bit more of a talk about accessibility, which is fantastic. But I think there's also, and please correct me if I'm wrong, a little bit of a gap between what when we talk about accessibility and then actually how that's delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of talk about accessibility. And I think if you look at most companies' corporate values, you will see inclusion in there somewhere, diversity in there somewhere. And most companies have got them. How much they actually kind of commit to them is always a big question. I think we've all been around companies that like to talk about it but don't deliver on it. And that's where the gap is just taking the time to look at it and, like I said, shift that perspective. So rather than just saying you're inclusive and making a corporate policy that says it, are you building that into every aspect of the company? Are you looking at the software that you're buying? Is that accessible? And that's not just a matter of those corporate values. If you look at it from a corporate risk perspective, from a legal risk perspective, if you're buying in software that someone within your company then potentially can't use because of a disability, you're then opened up to an actual legal issue, not just a matter of your own sort of morals and ethics that you're holding to. There's lots of ways that you can really, no matter how big that company is, look at it, just have the conversation. Literally just have the conversation, look at something and say, is this accessibly appropriate? As soon as you do that, you've started the whole process.
I'm wondering about yourself, David, being a director of this organisation. I mean, what's your background? Has it always been something you've been deeply passionate about?
Yeah, it's a weird one because I didn't start in accessibility by any means. I was in the sort of managed services area doing major incident management. Line management sort of touches on it a little bit. I am that annoying person who joins a company and immediately reads all the policy documents. I look for all the little asterisks and loopholes because a lot of people don't realize what is in there until it comes time that you need it. And that's when you're sick and on long-term leave and it's your manager who actually has to do a lot of that reading for you. And I like to be prepared. So because of being that person, once I started looking into the policies we had, you learn a little bit that way. Once you start managing people, you learn a little bit that way. And then joining internal advocacy groups when I was with Atos and Capgemini, those companies actually sort of take time to gather those employees who have disabilities and get their input, which I think is so important. Because without a disability, you can try and shift your perspective. But if you actually have people with disabilities who are using the technology every day, their input's always much more valuable. So that's how I kind of slipped into it. I also I got diagnosed with OCD very early and went through life assuming that that's what was going on with me, and then realized a little bit later that it was actually autism. It had been sort of not misdiagnosed, but slightly misunderstood, mostly due to sort of time period and such. But once I then joined the internal advocacy groups, I could sort of talk about it more, I could speak to other people. That's when you start to sort of understand yourself a bit better and then start to realize this sort of like broad spectrum of people you don't often think about. And then suddenly it's all you think about. It's an interesting shift, but very much not where I started, but it's been a couple of decades now.
And so many teams, I think internally we've noticed as well, want to improve this accessibility, but they don't really know where to start when it comes to starting the first steps. Or is it joining a group, or is it talking to your boss? All those kind of things kind of go through your head. I wanted to ask you, what do you think be the best places to start? What's the practical first steps that makes the biggest difference?
Yeah, I think, like we said earlier, that having that conversation to just ask yourself the question and shift your perspective, it's a good starting point. That's your foundation. But then when you want more practical steps, you start looking at things like the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is really the base of what we do in accessibility. And it covers a lot of simple cases. There's a grading system of sorts. You start with A, which is your sort of bare minimum. This is accessible. It's okay. It's fine. But you really want to aim for AA. That's your sort of middle of the road. That covers most of your accessibility needs. AAA is a little bit more niche. Most companies aren't hitting that mark, and most of them don't need to because it covers really sort of edge cases a lot of the time. But those, as a sort of, if you look at a cheat sheet of the WCAG guidelines, at the very least, it gives you something to start with. And then you look around you. What is your circle of influence within the company? Have you got someone internally who is sort of like an executive who likes to get involved in accessibility things, or you think would resonate with it? Maybe they could be a sponsor for sort of an internal accessibility group to look at your own accessibility, or you speak to people like me who come in and look at it very quickly because, like I said, we can spot these things a mile away a lot of the time. It's a curse. I have a habit of a big LinkedIn guy I don't know why, but I am. I find it very interesting to see what people have got going on. But I do have the curse of seeing someone's post, having a read through, and then just having a little look at their company website, just out of curiosity. And you sort of, yeah, just a little look. you've done a brilliant post here about like how inclusive your company is. Let's just see how much it backs it up. And there is that curse of what I call an instant audit, where you look at it without any tools, without looking at any code, and you take one look at it and go, well, that video doesn't have any method to stop it being played. That could be very overwhelming for someone. That's a pretty quick fix. You just change the wrapper, added a pause button, job done. You see those little quick things. So it depends on whether or not you want to go external or you want to start internal. Some people have got developers within their sort of software team that do have accessibility experience, but they're maybe just not focused in that area because they're working on other things and you've just never asked them.
And you said that there's developers out there that do have accessibility experience. Is that quite a niche thing?
Yeah, it's becoming more common, but a lot of times if you're sort of learning some basic development work, there will be a very small section on accessibility that doesn't go into a lot of detail. And if you're working on something much more complex in terms of what you're working on, in terms of the code itself, it kind of doesn't always cover those bases. And a lot of time, if a company that you've been working for, several companies you've gone through haven't kind of encouraged that and kept it going, if they're pushing the deadline instead of pushing the quality, for example, maybe they're going to miss those marks. Or you've been working internally and you've just never had the support for it. So you've not continued that path of education. Or you've just, clicked a couple of times, got through that part of the course and moved on and just not invested into it. Like developers, it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of learning. I've been very thankful to work with a lot of them, with a lot of different code bases, a lot of different systems and setups. And there's this weird mix, which I think is probably one of the reasons that I've ended up being the chair for the DevOps theater. You merge those business skills of ops, you merge in those development skills, and it's such a broad range of things you've got to learn. It's not really a huge surprise that people don't then specialize in accessibility. It's a very small part of a much bigger thing.
So mainly, I'm just curious. What do you hope attendees will learn when they attend TechShow London and DevOps Live? What they think you think they would think differently about when it comes to building these digital experiences that work for it?
Well, I think what I hope attendees will really think differently about is exactly what you've just said. It's digital experiences that work for everyone. So when we're thinking about end users of your products, we're thinking about a diverse group, not just that individual person that looks exactly like you and uses the system and tools exactly like you. I think it's generally a common analogy in development or when you're creating something that people think users are idiots a lot of the time. And it's because they do the things that we don't expect them to do. It's because they're changing things or doing things that we just don't expect them to do because it's not what we would do. And that's usually because we're the ones who built the system. So it's a system that works for us and it makes sense to us. And that applies not just to software, but as I've said, sort of your company website, your marketing material, your internal documentation, your software that you're buying in. All of it is digital, or near enough now. There's very little paper copies floating around offices anymore. All of that stuff is digital. All of that stuff interacts with everyone within your company, everyone outside of your company. Even if you're not selling to the public, if you've got a client, a CEO, some executive who you're going to partner with in this organization, and the very first experience they've got of looking your company up is that they can't use your website, it's not a great look. So hopefully it's just that people will start to think about what works for everyone and not just what works for them. And hopefully my session itself when I'm presenting has a little bit of a twist that I hope will make people just pause the next time they start a project and just consider, are you missing some angle? Are you missing a bit of perspective? And hopefully the whole show kind of offers people insight into slightly different worlds that they're not used to seeing every day.
Well, David, that sounds absolutely fantastic. And I love a twist as much as the next person. So I'm sure people will be coming in their forces and to come and attend your session because it is such an important topic and it's so integral for every single organization.